Okay, we're going to start with tutorial 9. Getting started with JavaScript. This is in the new perspectives. And then we might talk a little bit about the chapter out of the other textbook. It's not as exciting or important as the other ones. Let's focus on it. And I didn't bring up W3 schools. Let me bring up W3 schools. Some of this we've already seen, but it's good review. Objectives, I didn't shut my phone off. Insert a script element. Write JavaScript comments, display an alert dialog box, use a browser debugging tools, reference browser and page objects, use JavaScript properties and methods. Write HTML code and text content into a page, work with a date object, use JavaScript operators, create a JavaScript function, and create time commands. And let me go shut that door so you don't hear the noise. Now we got two types of programming. There's server-side programming. The program code runs from the server hosting the website. A lot of times when this is happening, I was going to say all the time, but I think there might be some exceptions. But a lot of times when this is happening, you cannot even see the code that's on the server. You just see the results. The idea on that is you can kind of hide the code from the people. There's a programming language called PHP, and it sits on the server, and you see the results of it on your client side. But oftentimes within the PHP code contains a lot of the information that would give you secrets about how the database is designed. And you don't want necessarily to give people that kind of information. So there's all different kinds of server-side programming languages. And you see what it says here, Vantage connects the server to an online database containing information not directly accessible to end users. Could be that it has a one account it uses to access that database, and nobody running it through the browser at home has that user ID and password. Disadvantages: use server resources and requires internet access, and long delays in case of system overload. There was one of them. I'm not even sure if it still exists. Called ColdFusion. I guess that still is around, but it had issues with performance. It used server resources, and you had to have a pretty good server for it to run decent on. One of the community colleges here in Kansas, its entire database was based upon the ColdFusion. So it used ColdFusion scripting to get into their database. and their pages were so slow. And they finally, I think, upgraded their servers, and then they could get a little bit better performance. But there is that issue. When you throw it down to the client side, it's running on the individual user's computer, and so you're throwing the processing down there. Okay, so here we got our end user. Um, they're sending information to a program running on the server. So your server program sit there, processes it, does all the handles all the CPU. Everything's done up on this side, and then only the result goes back to the end user. So really, they're not doing much on their side in terms of CPU usage and I/O and all that. Now, the client-side programming programs on the user's computer using downloaded scripts with HTML and CSS files. JavaScript is an example of that. Though JavaScript can be run in the server side. This distributes load to avoid overloading and program-related requests. You're letting 1,000 people that are accessing your site each day do the processing on their side. But client-side programs can never replace server-side programming. Server-side programming allows you more tools, more access, so you can have it go into your database. You don't want to give everybody direct access to your database. They go through this program that then goes into it. Let me talk more about that. Let's see. Oops, wrong one. Choose this one. There, rectangle. That'd work. So here's your user here. And then they're accessing the server. And from the server side, it's doing all the processing here. It might even have a database. But over here is your sales database, let's say. And this is internal to your organization. This is how we process the sales, shipping, everything's here. And so the user does not actually have they do not actually have access directly to this internal database. They got this piece in here in between, and it could be a separate database, or it could be just a code that allows you to go to that sales database over here. So again, this is where you don't want to give them direct access. You give them direct access, and they can do something called like an SQL injection attack. So if you gave them direct access, then they can do an attack like that. So you kind of hide it, kind of buffer that database from the user. Now, the SQL injection attack, the idea behind it, just to give you a why do we care about server side versus client side? The SQL injection attack is a perfect example of that. The idea behind it is, then I'll come back to this page. If I'm signing in somewhere, if I'm going to eBay and I'm signing in, got an account here. Got your email or username and password. After you fill these in, it builds an SQL statement. So the SQL statement might build might be to select, I'll just say star but this would be like field names that are defined in that table from login table where username equals, and then you programmatically build this. So where is equal to, then it puts like a single quote, then plus what they put in the blank. So username, and we put less than greater than around that just to indicate it, plus single quote, and password equals plus password, and this would be whatever they put in the password blank. I haven't tried to make that exactly correct, but you get the idea. It takes the value of the username here, the value of password, plugs it into here, and when it's all said and done, what it sends off to the database server is select star from login table, where username equals David, and password equals let me in. So your program dynamically builds this. Well, the problem is, I have an example. This is what I was talking about, where they build the statement like that. Is they can put code on there, something to this form. So if they put it in the right format for the username, they can say select star from login table where username equals David, and they wouldn't even have to even put a password in, depending on how it's written. But if I did the username, or 1 equals 1. And actually, if I did this correct up here, I could even have the password there. And depending upon if they did everything correct on that, they wouldn't know the person's password. But it comes down here and does this OR and says, oh, well, 1 is equal to 1, so lets them in. I'm not a hacker, so I couldn't tell you exactly, but it'll show you how to build that. You can also put a drop table on there. So like here, if they didn't have protection on this, for the username, let's see, users where name is equal to A. So like they build this with a David semicolon, or not semicolon, apostrophe, this drop table. And this assumes I know the table name, which is the part of the benefit of the server side processing is you're hiding that information. They don't know the details. Drop use to select store. Okay. I might have to put some more on there. But anyway, by putting this drop table on here, this would drop their table. So if they had a sales table or a login table or whatever of 10,000 entries, it would drop those 10,000 records. All of a sudden, 10,000 people couldn't access the database. I did this, I think it was last semester, last spring, and I forget what database I was even working with, and I just wanted to see if it'd work. I figured all modern databases had capability to prevent this, and so I researched it and played with it in class, and it dropped my table, or maybe it deleted all the entries. I don't remember which one I did exactly. But the databases, you can't assume that it's going to catch this, so you have to catch it through programming. Well, that's the idea of the server side is you can hide some of those details from them and intercept what they're sending. So then instead of them sending it straight to the database, they're sending it to a program in between the user and the database. And so here you can check. It's a very simple check. At no time should you allow a apostrophe inside of your username. It's a one-line check. You probably could even check for some other items, because there are pretty clever people out there. Check for drop table. No username should have drop space table in it. So you could look for those different items. Very easy checks to put into your program that'll prevent catastrophes. And you probably won't know why it occurred. That's the thing of it. You're sitting there working at a company, you just put your database online, and people are submitting sales, and you got a hacker going in and screwing with you. Maybe it's a competitor, and they're going to your site and they're dropping your table every day. Well, customers are unhappy. They're having to create brand new users every time they go to your site. If they drop the right table, they're losing all their sales information. So they got charged maybe on their credit card, but then they never received their shipment. If you knew what you're doing, the person didn't have a secure web page to submit these entries and so forth, you could shut somebody's business down pretty fast. Anyway, enough about the why the server side is so good. Let's see, we already talked about that. Now here we got our user here. They request a web page. It downloads the web page from the server, and then runs the program locally. So runs a JavaScript program down here instead of up here. Some programs you cannot run at the client side. They're not meant to. They're server-side programming languages. Now, JavaScript is a programming language for client-side programs. It's where it started at. It's an interpreted language that executes the program code without using an application. You don't have to have anything installed. You don't have to have a Visual Studio framework installed in order to run the program. It's supported by every major browser. Now, a compiler is an application that translates the program code into the machine language. So if we had something where we needed a compiler, then it would not be as efficient. The interpreted language just automatically runs. JavaScript code can be directly inserted to or linked to an HTML file. We saw that. You can put it directly into an HTML. And that's find an example. Here we got our HTML file, and right within there, we on a button click, we have this right here, where we're accessing inner HTML, the demo down here, and setting it equal to the current date. So if I click that, it gives me my current date. So again, that's putting JavaScript directly into it. And this is how you put your script in there. If it's an external file, JavaScript is attached to an HTML file using script element. So script source equals URL and then slash script there. I think I got an example of that, maybe. It's still up in my header section. I do my script, my start script here, my close script here. I still have my type equals text JavaScript like we've had before. But now I have a source. And it tells me where my source file is located at. And you notice there's nothing in between the beginning script and the closing script tags. So this will go out and get add-in j.js and insert that code right here. There it is. Now there's nothing really different about that add-in file. You can call it whatever you want, .js, and then here you just have our function. That's the same as if you were to take this and edit copy it, and edit paste it here between the script and the closing script, like right here. The beauty of this is this is now an external library that you can use in 100 different web pages. If you need to change that external file, this add-in.js, all you have to do is change it in one place, and then dynamically it's fixed in those 100 different web pages that reference this. Much better than actually inserting it directly into your code over here. Now, I don't know how you would show that over here in this editor. You'd have to have access to your files. Because you'd have to be able to create a new file. And I don't think there's any way to do that. No. So that can't be done on our W3 schools, unfortunately. But that's what they're referring to. It says where the URL is the URL of the external file containing JavaScript code. You can also do an embedded script instead of an external file, and we've seen that. That's weird. I don't remember why I was doing that, but this is an example of it. We have our function added right within the script in the closing script down here. So this is where you put it in here. Now this is very specific just to this one web page. So if I need to put the same code, whatever that's doing, in 100 web pages, I'd have to open up 100 HTML files. I'd have to paste this inside of each one. Versus putting it into an external file and then just referencing it this way. Now, it tells you a script element can be placed anywhere within an HTML document. When a browser encounters a script, it immediately stops loading the page and begins loading and then processing the script commands. We've seen this, where if you put it in the middle of your body of your HTML file, it'll run it when it hits it. There is async and defer attributes can be added to a script element to modify the sequence of processing. I've never played with those. Async attribute tells a browser to parse HTML and JavaScript code together. Defer attribute defers script processing until after the page has been completely parsed and loaded. Async and defer attributes are ignored for embedded scripts. And it looks like you just put defer there for that, or other one you can put async in there. Pretty much, I don't like JavaScript to go ahead and just run. I suppose there might be times where you'd want it, like if you want to put the date on the page whenever they go to it, no matter what. But for the most part, we program event driven. So you're doing something, you're clicking something, your mouse is going over something, something's occurring. It talks about JavaScript programs created using a standard text editor. I've been using Notepad, but some people like the Notepad plus or plus. I forget whether that's 2 pluses. Lots of other JavaScript programs out there. There's a web page. You can probably find a pretty good one. I think it's kind of a hard one to install. But there's a web page called osalt. I think it's .com. I'll Google it to make sure I don't go to someplace inappropriate. Yeah, that's open source. Certificate date invalid. Okay, I'm comfortable with this site, so advanced. Proceed to it. Let me go there. I don't think there's any sign up for this, so I'm not sure why they even need a certificate. I don't think they're selling anything. But in case you're wondering why does that come up, here up there it says not secure. If I click that, you see down here it says certificate is invalid. So if I click that, looks like their certificate expired back on October 20th. Sometimes Kali lets theirs expire, so sometimes it's easy to overlook. They're not free. Um, I never have looked for a certificate for my site because I don't sell anything on it. I don't have a login on it, so there's really no need to have any of that. Anyway, this is open source. Open source means you can make that smaller so you can see it a little better. Open source means free software. Even more than that, you can get source code and you can change it if you want. If I come up here and I type Dreamweaver and press enter, this will come up and tell me my matching pages. They've changed their format. It says alternatives. You got this down here. Aptena, Amaya. This is what I'm used to seeing, this kind of format. So open source Dreamweaver alternatives. Is Quanta Plus. This allows you to build web pages, and you can then insert. That one's out of business. Or changed their URL and didn't let them know. But you can build these web pages on the fly. Let me go to their website. So, and you'll find different ones. You see how many downloads I have here. This is the big one, 6 million downloads. This one, a little bit challenging to get installed. It's not a 5-minute install, or at least it wasn't for me. But you see, they got a HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code assist. So it kind of gives you more tools to help you with your programming. So there's a lot of different ones you can work with. I think sometimes when they become too big, then they just got too many features, and it overcomplicates just simple web page editing. But this is a good site. This is all the established ones, the ones that are well done. If I go to web development here, the green are the free ones, open source. The red ones are the ones you've got to buy. And green, there's green. So these are all ones you could install for free and use. Now, open source is much bigger than this. There's a website called SourceForge. And these should be ones that you're familiar with going into computer science. You should understand the principle of open source, free software that you can change the source code to. But SourceForge is the big repository of all the files. Complete open source and business software platform. Looks like last week they had 13 million downloads. Now, what you'll find out here is you'll find your open source software, but a lot of it is not very polished. Some of it's pretty bad. I could go out here and create a project and put code out there that was only halfway done. That really didn't do much. But you'll find everything under the sun out here. Look at Algol. And maybe I have to look for language too. Somebody has an open source Algol 68 implementation. That 68, by the way, is the date. Is popular back in the 60s. Nobody in their right mind uses alcohol anymore, but somebody loved it so much that they created a project. You'll find files to download. Some of them are pretty good about telling you how to install it. Some are not so good. Like this probably just gives you a source code, but if you want to see the source code for it, then I'm sure it's probably out here somewhere. Boy, they're pretty active. I don't know that, or they're not. They haven't done anything for about a year and 6 months. And I need to refresh my memory on Linux. I don't remember what RPM is. I'm assuming that's a compressed format. This looks like the source code here. So you could get the source code for that. Anyway, SourceForge is the big area of that. If you want polished ones, you go to osalt.com.org, whatever it was I went to. Okay, so whole long spiel to say you can use whatever editor you want. So I use Notepad just so I don't have to handle the headaches of students installing a bunch of software, and it's not installing on mine. I got a Mac, although Mac doesn't have Notepad, but it does got a simple editor that I can direct people to. So I try to keep it simple from my side, just so I don't have to worry about those pieces. Installing software can be a challenge at times. I had one computer at home I never could install Visual Studio on, no matter what I did. The last thing I found is somebody had a similar issue, and they wiped out every security setting they had on their computer, and then they could install it. Well, I didn't like what that would probably open up malware wise, so I didn't actually do it. Okay, comments. Comments aren't meant to slow your program down or anything. They're meant just to document. So that's their idea. You don't want to do too much documentation in any of your programming. Like if I said x equals 3 in some programming language, and say // is my comment in this language. This assigns 3 to the variable x. Then x is equal to x plus 1. This adds 1 to x. I've seen this, by the way. People do this. You should not document what is self-evident. You should just document some of the weird stuff. Things that you would come back 2 years from now, and could you understand it? If you need a little bit of a hint to understand it yourself, then that's where you put your comments in. Oftentimes, by making your variable names the meaningful names, then it self-documents. Sales is equal to 1,000. Commission rate is equal to 5%. Then commission is equal to sales times commission rate. It's kind of wordy, but I guarantee you that's self-documenting. There's not one line of code you need to document that. Well, this is setting sales equal to 1,000. This is setting our commission rate. This is calculating commission. So a little bit more wordiness on your variable names, and you don't have to comment. Worst part about comments is having incorrect comments. For example, you put this calculates commission. And maybe you're kind of wordy on that and so forth. Give this to the user, they say, no, that's not right. I didn't want to calculate commission. I want to calculate costs. And cost should be 10% of my sales. And you just think, okay. So I come here. Cost rate is 10%. And then down here, cost equals sales times cost rate. Give it to them. It's working. They say that's fantastic. That's correct. But you leave the old comment out there. So somebody coming in and trying to change your program, they're coming on here and they say, okay, I think I understand this, but this says this calculates commission. Why is it saying commission? This isn't commission. And creates a lot of confusion. So part of when you make a change, you want to make sure you change any comment right then. Changing it next week doesn't count. Changing it tomorrow doesn't count. My dad used to say tomorrow never comes. He's right. Finally learned that lesson. Oftentimes when you get a program done and you work in the workplace, and your boss comes by and says, how's it coming? Did you get that change made? So yeah, I got that change made. I put it out there. It's working and so forth. And just need to go and kind of clean up the code a little bit and so forth. And what do you think they tell you? A lot of times they may tell you, don't do it. They'll say, well, we have another project we need you to get on right away. And so in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, I'll clean this up later, and so forth. Then you got another project you're working on, and you'd like to take 4 hours and go clean up your code and redo some of it so it's looks perfect. But in the real world, they got a lot of other pressing projects they want you to work on. They don't have 4 hours for you to waste on doing that. As a consequence, code starts looking pretty befuddled. It has comments that don't match the code. It's not written necessarily correct. Some of the code I've written, I've done it really fast and so forth, and put it in place because they needed it fast. And then always had the good intentions go back later and do these corrections, and I never did. So yeah, if you do it on the fly as you're making a change, then you'll find that it'll actually your code will be readable, be able to maintain it in the future, and so forth. Example of and I didn't work in a high stress area in a lot of these companies, so mine was even pretty low stress. But one time where we had it was a sales lead program where the customer could go out to our website and they put in their information, name, phone number, email, and click that. And then it was supposed to send an email to our sales department. And the sales department would call them and say, hey, I saw you're interested in a spectrum analyzer. What can we sell you? And go over the different options and so forth. Fantastic communication. Um, Person doesn't have to call the company; they can fill out the web page and request that. Well, the Perl program behind that was using sockets to send the email and was not working. And they were very upset about that. Hadn't been working for a period of time. I don't even know what that was, whether it was 1 or 2 days. But in their mind, they're sitting there viewing all these people that filled out these requests for more information, and they never got contacted. Well, those people aren't going to buy a bunch of spectrum analyzers from that company. They'll go someplace else. So I never even heard back from them. And so they wanted it fixed right away, immediately. They told me you don't go home until you get this fixed. So I'm not very good with sockets. I have to admit that I've never been good at sockets. And so I was trying to figure out what that Perl program was doing to send the email address or send the email. And I'm sitting there scratching my head and wondering how many hours I'm going to be there, how many days I'll be there till I get it fixed. And so I finally called the individual I was working with over in sales, and I said, "Do you care if this program is written in Perl or can I write it in ASP?" That's what I've been asking them. The most complicated. They didn't care. They just wanted it to work. They just wanted to receive the email. They said, "I don't." They told me that. They said, "I don't care, just as long as it works." And so I went out and found me an ASP script out on somebody's webpage. I copied it, pasted in. I made one change to it, put in the email address it should go to, put it out there, ran a couple of tests, and it was fixed. Um, did I go back and change any documentation on it? No. I should have. It would have took me about 5 minutes. So the documentation that was on it was from the site I sold it from. Um, so a lot of times in programming, borrowing code is perfectly acceptable. Not acceptable in in your um, classes for your degree, because the idea is you're trying to get the concepts down. But in the real world, you look to see if somebody else has done that already. If they have, why recreate the wheel? Um, this morning, I was working on a spreadsheet using formulas, so it wasn't necessarily programming, but I was using formulas, and I was trying to figure out how to do this one task in statistics, figuring a Spearman rank coefficient, because my old spreadsheet didn't actually get down to the point where it calculated the p-value, and I wanted it to, so I went out and I could have spent forever trying to figure it out myself, but I googled it on YouTube. I found somebody that had a video out there on how to do it. I fast forwarded to the part where it's calculated the p-value because I had everything working down to that point, and it told me to use t.dis.2t, I think it was. But anyway, it told me what formula to use. So I put that in mind. I was up and running in about 2 minutes. This is the efficiency you're expected to, as an IT professional to achieve. They don't want you to sit there and say, well, academically, I will never look at anybody else's code out there in the internet. I will never look at anybody else's configuration. The idea is that you're supposed to use that. It's kind of a collaborative effort. Those people put their code out there for a reason. It took them forever to figure it out. And they want to share that with you, and hopefully people will share that with them. So it really is a fantastic community in terms of sharing. People that really frustrate me are the ones that share code that doesn't work. But maybe it does work with whatever version they were using. I don't know how many times I went to copy code and it's just like, well, this doesn't work. Why did they put this out here? Okay, enough about that. Here's how I do comments. // is a single line. It doesn't have to be just by itself on a line. You can be at the end of code. Like I indicated here, you can have it at the end like this. You don't have to have it on a separate line. Now, the single line is one I normally use. But they also got this / asterisk and asterisk /. This is for commenting several lines of whatever. Now, this is useful, so don't get it wrong. Just because I use this doesn't mean the other one isn't useful. Let's say I'm testing a lot of code, and I want to comment this code out. So I do my beginning / and then asterisk. Down here, I do an asterisk /. And now all this code in here is comments. So your web page won't run it. So this is a way you can test code. You can comment out code that you know is working and maybe just focus on the part that isn't. Okay. This just gives you an example, I guess. Slash, asterisk, asterisk, slash, and then whatever you want to put in here. I may have said this, but when I started working at Koch Industries at KOCH, they had me do a bunch of programming changes, and I'm a lot better, I think, at programming changes than I am writing a big system, because I can go in and focus just on the very small, narrow part that I should be focusing on and make changes. But first program I wrote completely from scratch, I was so proud of. I put my name on there just like this person, Hector Sadler. Put my author down, David Hayes, put my date down I did it on. So proud of that program. Here's something that's going to last eternity with my name on it. Probably lasted about 3 years before they scrapped it. And then I got called in the middle of the night, a year or 2 years later. My program had broke, and the programmer looking at it didn't want to be there at 2 a.m. And so they made a call to me to ask me what I had done in the program. I couldn't remember what I had done. I think I had to go in and help them. I don't want to put my name in every code I wrote, so I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. Now, if you're selling JavaScript code, then you do want to do that. You'll find web pages out there, because if you're selling it, you're trying to sell more of it. Free JavaScript libraries. Specky Boy. I'm not sure if I want to go to Specky Boy. Design bombs. Get flywheel. Okay, JavaScripting.com. That looks like something that wouldn't give me a virus. Famous last words. These are ones that you can get, I'm assuming, for free. Make a drawing animation on SVG. Try to look for something real easy. It's PDF reader in JavaScript. How about games? Let me go back to animation. Power to be applied to links, buttons, logos, and so forth. GitHub is a place where you can go to retrieve the file. It tells you how to download it, install it. I don't see anything downloading though. Okay, let's just go this one. Okay, so it looks like you can do a manual download here. That'll download a zip file. It'll tell you in documentation how to use it. This site's going super slow, or the links are just not working. I don't want a framework. React, that's another framework, I think. Underscore, here's a library. Does not extend any. These aren't like simple. These are more frameworks here to do different things. But anyway, I'm obviously not going to find one that I can get to real easy. That's statistics. Google Charts. Pre-built. So it looks like there's a go away. Chart.js would allow you to build these charts like this. So within your web page, you can use JavaScript to come up with this. And this might be based upon, and I don't know, I'd have to look at this. But this could be hard coded, but it also could be that it retrieves that information from a file. It could be it retrieves it directly from Google's finance site. I'd have to really look into it and see what it does. How long would it take me to create a JavaScript that created a pie chart, which is, I think, what one of the things they said this one does? Or even how long would it take me to create this? I don't know, year, 6 months. It would take me quite a while to create all of this. So you use what other people have created. If I go to Kali, right click on here and do view page source. And let's see if I can see any JavaScript. This is talking about using gtag.js, Google Analytics. Google either gave this to us for free, or we paid this as part of our service. Maybe we're working with Google Analytics such that our web page appears fairly high up in the search engine. Here's one from googlecode.com, html5.shiv. Google code's an error. Don't know what that is. We didn't write it, that's for sure. We went out there. Probably it's a free one. Here's some other ones. These all go along with the Google APIs. Again, none of this we wrote. They went out and researched, maybe looked at other people's websites. And let's see, this one, cloudfront.net. I wonder what cloudfront.net is. Not having any luck reaching those sites. If I go to this, Here's the library that they have included. Be nice if there's line breaks in there. You might be able to save this and bring it up in an editor, and it puts them on separate lines, but it'd take you a while otherwise. Doesn't look like they put any kind of comments in here at all, unless well, here's a slash. Oh, that's part of a web page. Never mind. Yeah, I'm not seeing any web comments at all. Even worse than that, they named all their variables like single letters. F, E. E oftentimes isn't necessarily bad. E is used reserved for error. But here's T. How long would it take me to figure out what they're doing? Forever. It would take me a long time to figure out. This is the idea of poor programming. This may be poor programming on purpose. By naming the variable names as single letters, nobody can figure out what in the world your code's doing. So even though they put it out here and everybody can visually see it, they may not be able to actually do anything with it. This is siteimproveanalytics.com // but no HTTP on front of it. I don't know if I can go directly to that or not. Guess I can. Looks like they use a lot of single letters again. Might be the same people that created the other one. But anyway, enough about that. If you did create your own library you put out there that you wanted to sell, or you want people to use it for whatever reason, you may want to put your name out there because you're trying to advertise yourself. Now, to write a JavaScript command, a command indicates an action for a browser to take. A command should end in a semicolon. Though I swore yesterday I'm probably mixing up languages, but I was doing some JavaScript and I don't think I was putting a semicolon on some of the lines. Here's a window.alert, and then welcome to Tulsa. Excuse me. This runs an alert dialog box in the browser window, and then that displays that text. Okay, so I got an HTML, my header section, my script, type equals to text / JavaScript. And I'm going to have a function here. Display it. Let's see if I can get the syntax correct here for everything. /script /head /body input type equals submit or button. I don't remember. Submit. That equals click here. On click. Now I'm going to run. Display it. May not even be close. Okay, so let me save that. test.html in all files. Now click save. We got a test, so test 2. Test 21. Okay, so test 21, right click on that, choose open with Google Chrome. You got a button. Okay. So now, alert, hello. Run it. I got some errors, which is good, because I wanted to show this later. Part of that you need to get used to when you're working with, we're going to be working with JavaScript pretty heavy the last part of the course here, is you need to get used to debugging it, trying to figure out what's going on. Using Google Chrome, the browser or the search engine to help figure out what you need to change here. If you're an Edge, using the search engine to figure out what you need to change, what you need to investigate. In Google Chrome, if you click the 3 dots here, there's more tools and there's developer tools. Edge and IE, you'd have to use a search engine to figure out where it's at. They all have this though. Comes up here, and here's our code over here. And if I click elements, I can go through here, and it'll bring up specific information just on that element. If I click console, this will tell me where my error is. It says unexpected identifier at line 4. So if I click line 4, function must need to be spelled out. Now this is an honest mistake. I didn't do these on purpose. So I'm just guessing on that because I have no memory. You cannot change it here. I get so used to wanting to change something here. If you ever run across a browser that lets you change it right here, let me know because that's the one I want to start using. Okay, now if I run it, hello. So that was my only issue. Well, let me put another issue there. Refresh that. I don't even have my button to click on. Some cases, this does not help you very much. If I come over to elements here, not too meaningful. There's no errors in my console. I go to my sources, and if you don't have your source code open here, by the way, you can click this right here. And nothing appears to be wrong. So unfortunately, that error didn't tell us anything. Now we're going to be looking at some of these later on, breakpoints and this and that, and the watch and network we probably won't do a whole lot with. Performance or memory. Sure, there's some good information here. If you're going to do JavaScript on a regular basis, then you probably use these tools a lot more. Okay, so I got to learn hello. We do a window alert. Save that. This page says hello. This page says hello. So over here, when they tell you to do a window.alert, Our alert will work just fine without that. That's frustrating. Sometimes you do not need to put items in JavaScript, and it'll still work. Sometimes you do need to put them. Let's get rid of these semicolons because it was telling us we need semicolons. See if I'm remembering right from yesterday. Oops, not there. Refresh that, click that. Works just fine without those semicolons. Can't type. That's the nature of working with computers. It isn't necessarily completely logical at all times. Um, Probably the language that I found the most challenging was ActionScript in a product called Flash Professional. Um, it seemed the most illogical programming language I'd ever seen. It was interpreted is an interpretive language, so it did line by line. So you could have all this code wrong up here, and it would run it, or have all this code correct up here. It'd run it, and then it get down to your one line of code that was wrong, and it would stop. It'd break. Um, did not give you a very good error handling. So it just really wouldn't tell me what was wrong a lot of times. Very challenging programming language. By the way, I'm learning Animate, Adobe's Animate, which is their new product to replace Adobe Flash Professional. And I finally broke down and got the Creative Cloud. And part of that Animate package is the program language that you're to go to now. You're not supposed to use ActionScript anymore, but the program language behind it you're supposed to be using is JavaScript. You find JavaScript is becoming more and more popular in a lot of different areas. Something that was just like a nice enhancement tool for web pages is evolving beyond that. So I'm real curious where JavaScript's going to head in the future. You know, I don't know if Unity you can use JavaScript. Let's see. Not sure if they'll eventually get rid of it. Maybe they have. Maybe that's what this one's about. It's not supporting Unity script anymore. I bet they're getting rid of it. But other packages are incorporating it. So JavaScript's becoming a standard in a lot of different places. In case you're wondering, Unity is a package for creating games. So some of the games that you may play were created in Unity, and they may be using JavaScript, a modified version of it, which is that Unity script they talked about. Okay, now JavaScript is case sensitive. Most programming languages are, so you have to get used to that. So if I say x equals 1 here, and do an alert on x, and save that. Okay, hello, 1. Let's see if it's case sensitive on variables. So x equals x plus 2. Save that. should get rid of those hellos. Just broke. Again, because we have a mixture of lowercase and uppercase. But notice I have my console up here, and probably not bad when you're doing all the JavaScript to have this console up running at all times. It tells me X is not defined. You're sitting there, what does that mean? I thought you didn't have to define things in JavaScript. Goes to line 9. Also says there's something at line 17, but first go to line 9. Click that. Then put a red squiggly under where the issue is. And then you can look at that and see, oh, that's a lowercase x, that's an uppercase x. Maybe that's the problem. And so then you change that. And refresh this. And if I go back to console, there isn't anything console-wise to display. And I didn't pay attention when I was running that. Didn't work. Hello, 3. Okay, so it did add. Uppercase A here. So refresh that and click here. Hello, doesn't work. This is interpretive. That's when it's going line by line. It runs this line, works. Runs this line, works. This line doesn't work, pops up with an error. And again, tells us windows.alert is not a function. You click that. A lot of the HTML programs that people have emailed me saying I can't get this to work or that to work. I should have actually showed this a little bit more detail earlier on. If you just go here, it'll point out to where your error is oftentimes. Okay, enough about that. Is everybody good on the debugging? I don't think you'll have any trouble. But again, you can Google it if you do. If you were to go to a different browser, Microsoft Edge. The world, Control B. There we go. See the 3 dots here? More tools, developer tools. You see they got the elements just like the other one. Console for error messages. Debugger. Hello. Hello. That isn't what I thought it was. I thought that might actually show her. I've never used this. This tells me something additional. It tells me I didn't put my doc type to the top. What if it lets me fix it? No option to fix it. Navigation occurred. Doesn't allow me to edit. I saw a little diskette here, which made me think I could edit the file. How stupid is that? Why do they have a save if you can't actually change? Oh well. But anyway, you see the similarities there. Okay, extra white space between commands is ignored. Line breaks placed within the name of a JavaScript command or quoted text string cause an error. So it's not like HTML where you can just press enter any time. Debugging. That's process locating and fixing a programming error, and we've already seen some of that. Sometimes you can do alerts where you're trying to figure out what's going on. I think the last assignment I gave you was to add all the even numbers between two values. So like down here, input ID equals num1. Let's see. I don't get that. Don't remember that correctly. Yes, I do. Okay. So if I wanted to bring those in, now you notice I got a mixture of double quotes and single quotes. That shouldn't matter. Um, they're interchangeable for the most part, unless you're embedding them in something else. Okay. So then here I want to bring in num1 is equal to parse int. Boy, this is gonna get the element by ID. I just remember bits and pieces of it. I'm missing something on the front of it. I think it's document. Perhaps to Google or look at the example. Num2 is equal to parse int document.get element by ID. I probably spelled one of these wrong, but let me go ahead and deliberately put an error in there so let's look at it. And let's just add two numbers together, num1 plus num2. Okay, put 3 in here, put 4 in here. Click here. Hello, I need to get rid of those hellos. Okay. Go to console. It says get element by ID is not a function. So again, click 9 there. It tells you what line number it's on. It's hard to believe that's the only error I put in there. So save that. So remaining JavaScript projects, this is what you should do to figure out what's wrong with your program. Okay, so I got another issue. What's this issue? Get element by ID is not a function. Elementy. Okay, now that one wasn't on purpose. An extra Y in there, I think. Yeah. That didn't look right. Document, what's missing? Oh, I just got extra space there. Okay. Now come over here, refresh this. 3, 4, 7. Okay. The assignment I had given you was to loop through the num1 and num2 by 2s and then add them together. Let me do by 3s. For x equals num1, continue while x is less than or equal to num2, and then x is equal to x plus 3. Now, since I'm summing these together, I'm going to have a variable called sum. Then down here, I'm going to say sum is equal to sum plus x. And then my alert, I'll print out the value of sum. Okay, so I'm going to go by 3s. So I'll come over here, refresh this. I start at 1, and I'll go to 7. So should add 1, then I add 3, and that gives me 4. Then I add 3, and that gives me 7. So it should be adding 1 plus 4 plus 7, which should give me 12. And I get 13. That's strange. First off, let me get rid of these hellos, finally. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Well, with a for loop, if you have more than one line of code, you need braces around it. If you have one line of code, then you can get by with no braces. And let's do an alert here. And we'll print out the value of x. We think that we have it increasing by 3s, but maybe not. Okay, so refresh that. 1, 11. So add 3, 4, add another 3, 7. Okay. Click that. It says 1. Okay, that's right. Starts at 1. 4. Okay, I just added 3 to it. 1 plus 3 is 4, so that's right. Add another 3 to it, gives me 7. Goes 13. Well, that's something I didn't anticipate. Oh, that's my sum. That's my sum down here. Never mind. So now I know that my for loop is working perfect. I don't need to worry about that again. Life is good. For loop is working perfect. Okay, now what about sum? Let's see what in the world's happening with sum. Okay, so come over here, refresh this. 1 in, 7. 2. I'm on my first number. So why is it 2? It shouldn't be 2. It should be 1 because we only got one number so far. Because remember, we're going from 1 to 4 to 7. Well, let's continue on. Next number should be 4 in terms of my x. And 4 plus 2 is 6. That's correct. And then 6 plus 7 would give us 13. Okay, well, that's correct. So really, my first one is the one that was messed up. So first occurrence of sum appears wrong. Then I come up here and I see, oh, sum is equal to 1. So I change that to 0. And that's what the problem was. Do you see how I use alerts to help figure out what was going on with my code? So sometimes you have your little red squiggly, tells you where you got a direct error, that's a syntax error, and sometimes you have runtime errors that occur when you run it, and it's just not giving you the right result. Using alerts is a way you can debug it in that manner. Now, obviously, it would not work very well if you entered in 5,000 for num2, because all of a sudden you probably have about 1,200 windows you have to click through to get to there. So you can't just put alerts everywhere. Again, my main goal here is to teach you debugging. Because pretty much all the rest of the stuff in this PowerPoint you've seen already. This talks about opening a debugger. Shortcut to open a debugging tool is F12, I guess. Or you can choose developer tool from the browse menu. They're pretty vague about this, or pretty specific, I should say. This would imply every browser has a developer tools option in some way. But maybe they do. This talks about inserting a breakpoint. Breakpoint's the location of the browser pauses the program to determine whether an error has occurred at that point during execution. Let's go back to here. So I'm running this code here. Okay, and then I'm gonna click that. And comes over here and is paused in the debugger. And try to remember what keystroke allows you to go on. I don't remember. But anyway, over here, you're going to see different options. This says resume script execution, step over next function call, step into next function call, step out of current function, step, deactivate breakpoints, and pause on exceptions. This step right here, if I click that, goes line by line through that. See, if I put my mouse over num2, it now says 7. If I put my mouse over num1, it now says 1. Sum, it says, is not defined because I haven't run that line yet. So I choose this step. Now if I put my mouse over sum, it shows you the value is 0. Now, like I said, if this is such that you go through this 1,000 times, you would not want to step through this 1,000 times. You would not want 1,000 alerts to pop up. You can put multiple breakpoints. And how I'm putting breakpoints, I'm just clicking to the left of the number on this. And then typically, and I don't remember where this is at here, but you can say run to the next breakpoint. Maybe this one, resume script execution. Let me click that. And now it skipped this for loop and it went down to here. And so I can put my mouse over the sum, and now it says 12. And so you can see what is going on with it interactively. Questions on using that? I never use them. But there's a way to do watches here. And like I do sum is 12, x is 10. So this allows you to have these watches here. Like if I go ahead and run this, I'm not sure if it'll keep my watches. I guess it does. If I click this again, it doesn't reset these. That's kind of bad. Refresh watch expressions. But anyway, as you're going through stepping through it, F9, that's how you step through it, F9. It'll update these. And let me add more. Num1, Num2. Okay, now step through it. And as you step through it, you see the values change. So you don't have to put your mouse over the variables. You can actually watch it there change. I don't use the watch. I know the principle behind it, but I don't use it all. I really just like putting my mouse over the variable over here and doing it. But some people like the watch. Okay, to get rid of the breakpoints, you just click the blue, and that gets rid of it. Edge, I'm sure has breakpoints. Developer tools. Okay, so I'm gonna click over here. Theirs is red. Add watch. Num1. Add watch. Num2. Add watch. Sum. Okay, so let me come over here for 1, put 7 in here, and click here. It's now paused. It's over here. It's broke out and it's sitting at this line of code right here. Okay, there's got to be a step. They all have steps. You just have to figure out where's that. Step into, step over, step out. Step into is the one we want. It's F11 on Edge. This step into runs that line of code, goes to the next one. This step over does not run that line of code. It just goes to the next one. Don't think I've never used that in my entire life. I'm not sure why you'd want to use it. And I don't even know what step out is. Okay, and what is this one? F11. Okay, so if I keep doing it, you notice over here on our watches, num1 is 1, num2 is 7. Now over my watches, sum is 0. I choose that. X is 1. And this actually even helps you understand the flow of a for loop. Okay, sum is equal to sum plus X. So now it updates the value of sum over here. Now it checks this. So it does this check to see if that's, or not check, it increases that by 3. Then it comes and does this. And then it does this code here. And so when it gets done with that loop, it then increases it by 3 again. And then checks this Boolean, see if it's true or false, and so forth. Anyway, I'll go ahead and stop that. Turn off my breakpoint and we'll just run normal. kind of got past the halfway break point. I think I'll go ahead and stop the recording there, and we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll start again.